Speed and Nguyen's Deep Dive podcast is an official podcast made by Speed and Nguyen with a voice made from Google's Notebook LM. Do not reproduce our podcast without permissions from the owner. Welcome to the Speed and Nguyen's Deep Dive podcast. Imagine shooting an intense, multi-million-dollar finale for a Hollywood blockbuster, like a gritty psychological climax exploring the absolute darkest moments of a global music icon's life.
Oh, yeah. You've got the sets built, the A-list talent, the lighting is perfect.
Exactly. The director yells, cut, the footage looks absolutely incredible. And then a lawyer just casually walks onto the set holding a hidden piece of paper from 1994. And this document legally forces you to throw the entire ending straight into the incinerator.
Which is just, it's mind-blowing. And not just throw it away, but suddenly you find yourself staring down the barrel of like $50 million in emergency reshoots.
Right.
Just to stitch together a completely different, much safer conclusion before the massive worldwide premiere.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this and wondering how a major movie studio could possibly make a multi-million-dollar oversight like that, you are in the right place today.
You really are.
Because that is exactly what happened behind the scenes of the monumental 2026 blockbuster biographical film, Michael.
Directed by Antoine Fuqua, yeah.
Right. And, the subject of our deep dive today is this film because it is making hundreds of millions of dollars right now, yet it has completely fractured audiences and critics.
You could probably split them down the middle.
So we've got quite a stack of sources today to help us figure this out. We're looking at a really detailed plot recap, Wikipedia's whole production history, and a wide spectrum of reviews.
Ranging from like a super glowing fan review on Substack all the way to some really scathing critiques from The Guardian, Deep Focus, and Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, they did not hold back. So our mission for this duck dive is to unpack that massive divide between the audiences and the critics, and really to uncover this wild multi-million-dollar behind-the-scenes legal drama that literally rewrote the ending of the film.
It's honestly a story that's as dramatic as anything they put on screen.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start with what actually did make it onto the screen. Because, honestly, the sheer spectacle of it is undeniable. Audiences are throwing, almost $800 million at the box office to see this?
Closing in on $800 million globally, yeah. It's a juggernaut.
A total juggernaut. And the film, it traces this very deliberate timeline, right? It kicks off in 1966 in Gary, Indiana. We get this really visceral, intense look at young Michael and his brothers living under the heavy iron fist of their father, Joe Jackson.
And we really have to talk about Colman Domingo here.
Oh, absolutely. His performance is...
It's incredible. Even the most cynical critics out there are universally praising Colman Domingo's performance as Joe.
Yeah, he plays him with this terrifying commanding gravity.
Exactly. You really understand the claustrophobia of that small house in Gary, right? And that intense, often brutal pressure cooker that forged the Jackson 5 in the first place.
Right, it sets up this massive narrative engine for the rest of the movie. You see the grueling rehearsals, the signing with Motown, and then, Michael's meteoric breakout as a solo artist.
Antoine Fuqua did not skimp on the set pieces at all.
Not even a little bit. We get these massive soaring recreations of the 1984 Victory Tour and the 1988 Bad Tour at Wembley Stadium. They look huge.
They really do. The scale is massive.
But for me, the casting is the huge question mark here. You have newcomer Giuliano Valdi playing young Michael, which is fine. But to play the adult pop star, they cast Michael's actual nephew, Jaafar Jackson.
Yeah, and that decision has been the center of so much debate from the very beginning.
Right, because my immediate reaction is, isn't this just a gimmick? Like, casting the nephew feels like a shortcut. It almost feels like trying to restore a classic antique car using parts in the exact same factory line.
That's a really good way to put it.
Like, structurally, he shares the DNA. He looks right. He sounds right. But does casting a relative actually give the performance a soul? Or is it just a parlor trick to get diehard fans into the theater?
You would think it's a shortcut. But if you look at the rehearsal notes and the way critics are reacting to Jaafar, he actually had to work incredibly hard to, unlearn his own modern dance habits.
Wait, really? Unlearn his own dancing?
Yeah. It isn't just a cheap imitation. The consensus across all our sources is that there is this snapping, angular fluidity to his movements that feels completely natural. He somehow perfectly captures that very specific electrostatic energy Michael had on stage.
It's true. Seeing the recreations of the Motown 25 performance where he debuted the moonwalk during Billie Jean, it's uncanny. It's like seeing a ghost.
And the attention to detail from the filmmakers goes way beyond just the dancing.
Oh, for sure. Like how they show him hiring actual members of the Crips and Bloods for the Beat It music video to promote unity.
Right, they really dug into the lore of those famous moments.
They did.
Hmm.
They even dramatized that infamous 1984 Pepsi commercial shoot, the one where the pyrotechnics malfunctioned and set his hair on fire.
Which was a pivotal, deeply tragic moment. I mean, it caused permanent physical damage and arguably sparked his lifelong reliance on painkillers.
Yeah.
What's fascinating here is how the film absolutely nails the what of Michael Jackson's talent and career. Through Jaafar's performance and Fuqua's direction, they show you exactly what made him a global icon. You feel the immense scale of his ambition.
I feel like I hear a but coming here.
Oh, a massive one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because while the film perfectly captures the what, it almost entirely refuses to interrogate the why.
Ah, right.
It shows us his eccentricities, sure, but it actively avoids exploring the deep psychological reasons behind them. And that specific avoidance is the exact mechanism driving this huge critical backlash.
And what a backlash it is. If you're looking at the metrics, there's a historic disconnect here. On Rotten Tomatoes, which aggregates professional film critics, the film is sitting at a dismal 38%.
Ouch. Yeah, that's rough.
Right. But then, if you look at the cinema score, which is, a metric that tracks the immediate emotional reaction of everyday moviegoers as they walk out of the theater, it holds an A-.
That is a chasm. That's not just a difference of opinion. That's two totally different realities.
It really is.
Yeah.
So, to understand why critics are revolting against a movie that audiences clearly love, we have to look at the film's structure. Right?
Exactly. The movie runs for over 2 hours. It builds this massive narrative momentum, and then it just stops abruptly. In 1988.
Right after the bad tour.
Right. And by cutting the story off in 1988, the filmmakers completely omit the 1993 child sexual abuse allegations.
Wow.
They omit his later marriages, the birth of his children, his eventual financial ruin, and his drastically changing appearance later in life.
The entire second half of his life, basically.
Yeah. The only exception they make is one brief scene that attempts to explain a rhinoplasty by tying it to his vitiligo and his affinity for the Peter Pan story.
Okay, now really quick before we go any deeper into this, we need to be very clear with you, the listener. As we discuss these missing elements, specifically the allegations from 1993 onwards, we are strictly neutrally reporting the contents of our sources and the critical reaction to the film's omissions.
Exactly. We're just looking at what the film left out and how critics responded to that.
Right. We are absolutely not taking a side on his guilt or innocence, nor are we endorsing the viewpoints of the critics or the fans. We are simply examining how the filmmakers chose to construct this narrative and why it's causing such a massive firestorm.
That's a crucial distinction because the critics aren't necessarily acting as judges of his life. They're acting as judges of the film's artistic integrity.
Right, they're critiquing the movie as a movie.
Exactly. Like Peter Bradshaw in The Guardian famously dismissed it as cruise ship entertainment.
Oof, cruise ship entertainment, that stinks.
Yeah, and others in our sources called it a puff piece or described it as blandly inspirational.
Is this like reading a Wikipedia page where someone just deleted the entire controversies tab?
That's exactly what it feels like to the critics. And they specifically point to the use of CGI animals as a perfect example of this.
Oh, the animals, which I have to admit totally baffled me when I read about it. He's Bubbles the chimp, he has a pet llama,
yeah.
And they are rendered in this slightly distracting, hyper-real CGI. It feels like they're using like Disney sidekicks to paper over profound psychological trauma.
That is exactly the critic's argument. The digital pets are utilized to make his profound isolation look cute and idiosyncratic, instead of exploring the deep-seated pain of a man who felt he couldn't trust adult human beings. The film gives you a quirky scene with a CGI monkey.
Right.
It completely defangs the reality of his life.
I mean, I'm not totally convinced that everyday audiences mind, though. The box office basically proves they just want the hits. But from a storytelling perspective, it's weird. It's like trying to tell the story of a complex, devastating historical war, but filtering it entirely through the perspective of a golden retriever.
Yeah, it completely changes the tone of the reality.
Why would a director of Antoine Fuqua's caliber agree to such a sanitized version?
Well, this brings us to the immense influence of Optimum Productions, which is the company that oversees the Michael Jackson estate.
The estate.
Right. Think of it like a royal family commissioning their own official portrait. If they are the ones paying the painter is obviously going to leave out the blemishes.
Because the family controls the intellectual property. If you want the songs, you play by their rules.
Precisely. They control the music rights, the likeness, the archives. When a family estate has a vested financial interest in protecting a billion-dollar brand, you are inevitably going to get a vanilla version of history.
Right.
The modern musician biopic has increasingly become an exercise in brand management rather than true warts-and-all biographical exploration.
But wait, here's where the story completely flips on its head. Because I was reading through the production history and this greatest hits highlight reel. This sanitized, safe version that magically stops in 1988. That was never the original plan.
No, it was not. And this is where the off-screen reality becomes a literal legal thriller.
Right. Because the screenwriter is John Logan. He's the guy who wrote Gladiator and The Aviator.
He's a heavyweight.
Yeah, he knows how to write complex, flawed historical figures. And his original script did explore the allegations. In fact, the movie originally opened in medias, meaning it started right in the middle of the most chaotic action.
Yeah.
It originally opened in 1993 with Michael Jackson staring at his reflection as the police raid Neverland Ranch.
Which is a dark, complicated, incredibly compelling opening for a film.
And Antoine Fuqua actually shot this footage.
They really did.
He built the sets, they lit it, they filmed it. I am genuinely baffled here. Here's where it gets really interesting. How does a massive Hollywood studio shoot an entire movie before realizing a legal clause prevents them from releasing the ending?
It is one of the most stunning Hollywood miscalculations of the decade, without a doubt.
Seriously, how does that happen?
Yeah.
With entire floors of high-paid lawyers.
To understand how this happens, you have to look at the sheer, tangled scale of the legal web surrounding the Jackson estate. During the post-production editing phase, so way after they shot it, a hidden clause was brought to light. It was buried deep in the 1994 financial settlement between Michael Jackson and Jordan Chanley, who was his very first accuser.
A settlement from over 30 years ago.
Yes. And this specific ironclad clause legally barred any mention of Chandler in any future commercial film or media produced or sanctioned by the estate.
Okay, so let me get the logistics of this straight. You have a massive crew, catering, lighting, A-list talent, all scheduled down to the minute. You shoot an entire third act of a movie dealing with the fallout of the 1993 allegations.
Yep.
And then, in the editing room, someone realizes an NDA signed before half the cast was even born acts as a legal brick wall.
Exactly. They were entirely boxed in. Because the estate was co-producing the film, that 1994 clause applied directly to Lionsgate and Universal Studios.
Oh, wow.
The studio completely panicked. They couldn't mention the catalyst for the 1993 raid, which meant the raid scene made absolutely no narrative sense anymore, which meant the entire third act of the film had to be legally amputated.
That is wild. They literally had to scrap the climax of the movie.
They did. They had to hastily rewrite the script to end the movie early. They decided to just culminate the story at the 1988 Bad Tour right before any of the controversies began.
But you don't just, magically change an ending in post-production.
No, not at all. This sudden pivot required 22 days of massive reshoots.
22 days of reshoots on a movie of this scale. I mean, that's basically shooting an entirely new indie movie just to stitch onto the end.
And it cost them dearly. Those reshoots added up to $50 million?
$50 million.
Yeah, ballooning the total production budget to a staggering $200 million.
$50 million just to figure out how to stop a movie an hour early because of a decades-old contract? That's just, it's mind-boggling.
It really is.
And the chaos wasn't just limited to, dusty legal documents. The present-day family drama behind the scenes was also super intense. You have Paris Jackson, Michael's daughter, actively criticizing the production while they were shooting.
Right. Her involvement, or rather, her opposition to it, adds a whole other layer of complexity to how the estate manages its image.
Yeah, according to the sources, she apparently filed a legal motion against the estate executors over the budget. And her specific frustration is fascinating. She was furious about how much money the estate spent casting Miles Teller to play the estate's own lawyer, John Branca.
Yeah.
She felt Branca was using the movie's massive budget to, enrich and aggrandize his own legacy on screen rather than focusing purely on her father.
It's incredibly meta, isn't it? The estate paying millions to a famous actor to play the guy who runs the estate while the daughter sues them over the optics of it.
You can't write this stuff.
You really can't. And on top of that, you also have Janet Jackson, arguably the second most famous member of the family, flat out refusing to be involved in the project in any capacity. She just opted out entirely.
Wow. So when you lay all these pieces out on the table, the hidden 1994 clause, the $50 million reshoots, Paris Jackson's lawsuit, Janet's silence, it totally recontextualizes the movie we actually see in theaters.
It absolutely does.
It explains why critics feel like they're watching a $200 million piece of corporate damage control. The movie isn't ignoring the later years because it thinks they aren't important. It's ignoring them because, legally and politically, it has a gun to its head.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is a textbook example of how off-screen realities completely dictate on-screen art.
Yeah.
The filmmakers were forced to take what was originally scripted as a nuanced, probing biographical drama and hollow it out. They had to turn it into a pure, unblemished celebration of music.
But the irony is, for the fans, that limitation actually worked.
Yeah, it really did.
Fans aren't walking out of the theater complaining about the 1994 Jordan Chandler clause. They're walking out buzzing about the moonwalk. The legal constraints literally sculpted a narrative that everyday audiences found joyous and unburdened.
Because it delivers exactly what the brand promises, right? The spectacle, the hits, and the genius of the performer, all without demanding the audience wrestle with the deeply uncomfortable reality of his later years.
It's a fascinating paradox. So, looking at everything we've unpacked today, Michael is undeniably an unprecedented financial triumph.
No doubt about it.
It features genuinely mesmerizing performances, especially from Jaafar Jackson, that managed to resurrect the visceral magic of the king of pop for a brand new generation. But at the same time, it is a movie operating in a legal straitjacket.
Heavy contractual clauses and intense familial oversight resulted in a totally fractured narrative, one that was forced to deliberately ignore the darkest, most defining chapters of his life.
Leaving us with a cultural artifact that is deeply entertaining, but historically incomplete.
Extremely incomplete.
Which brings us back to you, listening to this right now. Why does all this behind-the-scenes chaos actually matter? Why should you care?
Right.
Because it challenges us to ask what we actually want when we buy a ticket to a biographical movie. When you walk into the theater, do you want the unvarnished, complicated, sometimes incredibly ugly truth of a human life? Or, if we're being completely honest with ourselves, do we just want a 2-hour permission slip to dance to our favorite songs again without feeling conflicted?
It is the ultimate tension of the modern biopic genre. And, it leaves the studio with one final, very practical problem.
Oh, right, the sequel.
Yeah.
Because despite everything we just talked about, the film actually ends with a title card that reads, "His story continues." And Lionsgate has officially announced that a part 2 is in development.
Exactly. So here's a final thought for you to mull over. If the estate maintains this level of strict, uncompromising control over the brand, and if legally binding clauses from 1994 physically prevent a Hollywood studio from even mentioning his accusers on screen, how can a part 2 possibly be made?
It's a massive puzzle. Will the sequel finally find some clever, legally viable way to address the controversies that entirely defined his final 2 decades? Or is the complete, unvarnished Michael Jackson story simply legally impossible to tell on a movie screen?
That might be the actual $200 million question.
He's again in the next episode of this podcast.